Captain Bartosek was on a regularly scheduled tracking mission over the winter, equipped with these transmitters to find female Burmese pythons and their eggs deep into the wilderness.
In the heart of Florida's wild swamps, a shocking mystery unfolded. Giant pythons, normally apex predators, are disappearing without a trace. Imagine tracking a serpent over 13 feet long, only to find not the snake itself, but its radio transmitter pulsing from inside another creature. What kind of animal could swallow these massive invaders whole and still live to tell the tale? This isn't a rare fluke, but a repeated pattern that has stunned scientists and challenged everything we thought we knew about the Everglades food chain. Could one native species be turning the tables on an ecological menace? Vanishing giants in the Everglades. For years, scientists have been tracking Burmese pythons in Florida's wetlands with the hope of better understanding their movements and habits. These snakes are enormous. Some stretch over 13 feet long and weigh more than 50 pounds. So when radio signals from tagged pythons went silent, it wasn't unusual at first, but a troubling pattern emerged. Entire pythons began disappearing without a trace. The transmitters implanted in these snakes kept sending signals, but the snakes themselves were nowhere to be found. When researchers finally reached the precise locations marked by the still beeping transmitters, they found something baffling. Instead of the tracked python resting or hiding nearby, the snake was gone, vanished without a clear sign of struggle. At first, the mystery deepened. How could a creature that dominates this ecosystem suddenly disappear? Even more puzzling, the transmitters were now alive inside something else. The equipment continued pulsing, but it was coming from inside another animal's body. This discovery stunned the team. An apex predator like the Burmese python doesn't just vanish. And to find a transmitter inside an unknown creature suggested something remarkable. Whatever had consumed the python had done so quickly and completely. The snake's long body seemed to have been swallowed whole, with no torn flesh or traces left behind. This was no ordinary predation. It was something extraordinary and unknown. The radio tracking wasn't a one-time investigation either. Similar signals flatlined in the same strange way months apart, indicating this was not an isolated event. Multiple pythons disappeared in identical fashion, raising urgent questions about what force was in the swamps, hunting down these giant invaders systematically. The implications rippled through the research community. What or who was this unseen predator? The situation seemed surreal. How could an animal capable of swallowing such massive snakes go undetected in a landscape already heavily studied? And why had no one witnessed this predator in action until now? The mystery demanded answers not just for scientific curiosity, but because the fate of Florida's fragile ecosystem might depend on understanding this unexpected threat to the invasive pythons. Researchers scrambled to deploy cameras and gather more evidence, hoping to catch the culprit in the act. The unusual pattern required careful monitoring and patience. Could capturing this predator on film alter the story that had seemed so one-sided for decades? The Everglades had been at the mercy of these invasive snakes for years. Finally, nature was showing signs of pushing back. Though the pythons had wreaked havoc for a long time, their sudden, unexplained disappearances hinted at a new chapter. The signs were there, but the full truth remained just out of reach. The researchers knew the stakes were high, and whatever awaited discovery might reshape the known food chain in Florida's swamps. The waiting game continued. As the effort to understand this mystery grew more urgent, so did the awareness that this predator defied expectations. The notion of a creature so powerful that it could consume apex predators whole was almost unthinkable. But the data was undeniable, and soon the surprising identity of this mystery hunter would come into focus, turning assumptions upside down. The vanished giants were not gone by accident. The evidence suggested a calculated hunter, one that had adapted or evolved to take down what was once untouchable. The question remained, what could that be? This puzzle was about to be solved, and it would reveal a secret hard to believe in any wilderness. Yet before unraveling how these invaders spread so rapidly, another question demanded attention. Something in these wetlands had begun turning the hunters into prey, quietly shifting the balance of power and exposing a weakness no one realized these giants had. Transitioning from this baffling disappearance leads us to understand how these massive invaders arrived and why they seemed so unstoppable in the first place. The Burmese python invasion. Burmese pythons are not native to Florida. These massive snakes originated thousands of miles away in the humid jungles of Southeast Asia, thriving in countries like Myanmar, Thailand, and Vietnam. But by the 1980s and 1990s, the exotic pet trade brought thousands of them to the United States. Their striking appearance and impressive size made them popular as dangerous, eye-catching pets. What few people anticipated was how quickly these baby snakes grew out of captivity into colossal, wild predators. Burmese pythons can reach lengths of up to 20 feet and weigh over 200 pounds. Their powerful muscles allow them to constrict and swallow prey whole, even targets as large as adult deer or American alligators. Suddenly, what started as exotic pets became formidable beasts with a deadly appetite. The release and escape of these pythons into the Everglades happened for several reasons. Some irresponsible owners dumped or released their snakes because they were unprepared for their rapid growth and the challenge of care. Then, in 1992, Hurricane Andrew devastated local breeding facilities, forcing many captive pythons into the wild. From that moment, the invasion accelerated unchecked. Once established, Burmese pythons had nearly no natural predators in Florida. The native wildlife never evolved alongside snakes of this size and power. They became the perfect hunters in an ecosystem filled with abundant prey that didn't recognize their threat. Over the decades, the pythons devastated native populations, feeding heavily on raccoons, rabbits, bobcats, birds, and even deer. The statistics tell a dark story. Some regions have experienced raccoon population declines that exceed 99% since 1997. The population of opossums and marsh rabbits and foxes has experienced population declines that are equally devastating. The pythons have expanded their feeding habits, which resulted in ecosystem disturbances that destroyed native species while disrupting natural predator-prey relationships. From 2008 until 2010, wildlife researchers reported more than 10,000 python sightings, but experts estimate that a larger number of pythons exist within the swamp. One ecologist estimates that the snake population exceeds 200,000 snakes, which have become trapped in the dense plant growth. Humans find it hard to locate these creatures because of their ability to hide and their ability to blend into their surroundings, which results in their actual population numbers remaining unrecorded. The python invasion has turned North America's most protected natural area into an environmental disaster which creates more problems than simple ecological disturbances. The snakes established themselves as the dominant species because they had no natural enemies to control their population. The organization faced an imminent threat that became increasingly serious through their ongoing destructive actions, which continued without interruption for many years. The Everglades' natural equilibrium showed signs of permanent damage because of unending dangers which threatened its existence. The invaders controlled a territory where they could easily catch their prey without facing any significant danger. The changes which occurred unexpectedly started to create evidence that native species that had faced extinction were starting to return to their former territories. For years, their expansion seemed inevitable, almost mechanical in its precision. Every marsh, canal, and mangrove offered new territory to claim. Yet beneath this silent takeover, subtle resistance was forming, an unseen counterforce emerging within the very ecosystem they had come to dominate. Understanding how these pythons gained their deadly foothold in Florida sets the stage for the shocking discovery of what or who is finally challenging their dominance. Failed predators and dead ends. When the pythons started disappearing mysteriously, researchers naturally looked to the largest usual suspects in the Everglades. American alligators tower as one of the most feared predators, capable of crushing and rolling prey to death. But bite patterns found on the remains of one python did not match alligator attacks. The damage was different, lacking the crushing evidence that alligators leave behind. The Florida panther, another top carnivore, also seemed a reasonable suspect. These elusive cats have the strength and claws to slay a python if the opportunity arose, but investigators found no claw marks or signs of mammalian predation on the vanished snakes. It became clear the pythons had not been torn apart and dragged off as one might expect from big cats. Similarly, other large predators such as bears and birds were ruled out. There were no feather imprints or teeth marks consistent with these animals. The pythons were not just injured, They were consumed intact, swallowed whole with no visible damage. This made the mystery even more perplexing. What predator could swallow an entire snake this large, undamaged? This eliminated many logical explanations and forced the research team to consider unusual possibilities. If the usual apex predators weren't responsible, then perhaps something less obvious was at work. Yet, what native creature could possess both the size and method to consume massive pythons whole without a trace? For weeks, the team was stumped. The evidence pointed away from traditional predators and toward an entirely new understanding of the Everglades food web. The snake hadn't simply been torn apart and eaten. It was gone entirely, swallowed like a strand of spaghetti, far too intact for normal predation. Scientists knew they needed to capture something on camera to confirm their theory. The breakthrough moment required patience, the right placement of cameras, and a willingness to reconsider established knowledge. The swamp, as it turned out, held a surprising answer. Eventually, the footage exposed a predator nobody predicted. It was itself a snake, a venomous native species capable of slaying and swallowing large pythons. This discovery shattered decades of assumptions and made scientists rethink how survival plays out in this complex ecosystem. Uncovering the identity of this unexpected hunter opened the door to a deeper understanding of how nature might be fighting back against one of its greatest threats. Each discarded theory narrowed the field further, tightening the mystery with every failed match. What remained was not just unlikely, but unprecedented. A predator operating without noise or struggle, leaving behind only silence, where dominance once ruled unquestioned in these wetlands. As the puzzle pieces fell into place, a new picture emerged of Florida's swamps and the fierce, sometimes invisible battle raging within them. The unexpected predator emerges. After weeks of puzzling over vanished pythons and eliminating all usual suspects, the researchers finally captured footage that changed everything. The predator responsible was not a giant mammal or a reptilian heavyweight like the alligator. It was a snake, a native venomous pit viper, the Florida cottonmouth. This discovery stunned scientists because it had long been assumed that no creature in those swamps could confront and consume a Burmese python whole. The Florida cottonmouth, also called the water moccasin, is a muscular, semi-aquatic snake known for its striking defensive display. When threatened, it opens its mouth wide, revealing bright white tissue inside, a warning signal to back off. Yet, beyond this intimidating show, few knew it had quietly mastered a predatory skill that could reshape the balance of power in the Everglades. What these cameras revealed was a cottonmouth methodically hunting juvenile Burmese pythons, swallowing whole snakes nearly its own length. One of the most dramatic moments captured showed the cottonmouth consuming a python tail first, inching the entire serpent down its throat with relentless determination. This was no chance encounter, but a precise, repeated behavior, signaling that cottonmouths had adapted to include these invaders in their diet. Researchers realized that this was not a fluke or isolated incident. Several transmitters implanted in juvenile pythons were later found still pulsing inside the bellies of cottonmouths. This evidence made it clear that the cottonmouth wasn't just opportunistically eating pythons, it was actively hunting them. This revelation forced scientists to rethink Florida's food web and predator-prey dynamics in the Everglades entirely. The size comparison itself was astonishing. The pythons they swallowed measured between 2 and 3.5 feet, but the actual cottonmouths measured between those dimensions. The snake eats snake scenario defeated previous beliefs about swamp dominance. The Burmese python lost its apex predator status after this native animal proved to be a better hunting opponent. The research finding proved that ecological systems possess an important ability to recover from disturbances. The python threat causes native species like the cottonmouth to develop new adaptive behaviors as their natural response. The swamp developed its secret defense system, which functioned like a concealed army that fought against the python invasion. The scientists experienced cottonmouths eating pythons with expert skill, which created a feeling of joy and optimism. The ecosystem showed an ongoing natural process that demonstrated how recovery would happen after destruction. The new predator-prey relationship created a new challenge because it required scientists to study which changes would remain permanent. The cottonmouth serves as a military officer in the unexpected conflict because it shows the Everglades ecosystem exhibits both dynamic and complex characteristics. The native wildlife at this location shows native species can succeed in their battle against invasive species when they inhabit a region that invasive species have taken over. Yet what appeared to be brute force was anything but random. Beneath each successful hunt lay a sequence of calculated advantages: stealth, precision, and timing, working together in ways that allowed this native predator to challenge an invader once thought beyond reach. But the story of how exactly cottonmouths managed to pull off these feats leads naturally to examining their unique adaptations. Cottonmouth's deadly adaptations. The Florida cottonmouth's ability to hunt and consume pythons isn't just a matter of courage or luck, it's built on a remarkable set of physical and biological adaptations. Adults typically grow between 2 and 4 feet long, with some rare individuals exceeding 6 feet. They are heavy-bodied, muscular snakes perfectly designed for a semi-aquatic lifestyle, thriving in the swamps, marshes, and waterways of the southeast. One of the cottonmouth's most potent tools is its venom, which is hemotoxic. This means it attacks tissue and blood cells from the inside out, causing extensive damage that can quickly immobilize prey. In humans, untreated bites have a mortality rate of about 17%, but for smaller animals, the venom is nearly always deadly. This effect is particularly valuable when taking on prey that can fight back, like juvenile pythons. Cottonmouths have a unique hunting method. They strike quickly and then release their prey, waiting patiently for the venom to work while keeping a safe distance. This strike and release strategy minimizes risk from struggling prey. When dealing with pythons, especially young ones that haven't developed full strength, this tactic proves lethal and efficient. Another key adaptation is the cottonmouth's infrared sensing ability. As pit vipers, they possess specialized heat-sensing organs located between their eyes and nostrils. These pits detect infrared radiation, or body heat, allowing the snake to see warm-blooded animals even in complete darkness. This capability makes hunting at night in murky swamp waters far easier. The cottonmouth's ability to detect the faint heat signature of reptiles like pythons, which are slightly warmer than their surrounding environment, is a critical advantage. Their thermal vision acts almost like a neon sign highlighting their prey's location, even when hidden under foliage or submerged. Combined with their muscular build, this makes cottonmouths stealthy and deadly hunters. Cottonmouths are also natural snake eaters, known scientifically as Ophiophagus. They regularly consume at least 27 different species of snakes, including others of their kind. This isn't new behavior triggered by the python invasion. It's part of their long-standing ecological niche. The inclusion of Burmese pythons is simply a recent extension of their diet. When hunting fish or frogs, cottonmouths hold prey in their jaws while venom takes effect. But when facing pythons, especially juveniles, the venom serves to subdue and slay the prey after a quick strike and release. Young pythons, despite their size, lack the powerful muscular strength adults develop and are vulnerable to this venomous ambush. By exploiting this vulnerable window in juvenile pythons, cottonmouths exhibit a lethal efficiency that has caught researchers off guard. Their predation on invasive snakes isn't just survival, it's a form of evolutionary pushback. Observing this natural warfare illustrates how native predators are shaping the future of the Everglades, one bite at a time. This remarkable set of adaptations paints a picture of a formidable hunter, quietly tipping the scales in a long and difficult ecological conflict. While the cottonmouth may seem like a simple snake to casual observers, its role as a python predator reveals a sophisticated predator perfectly suited to this environment's challenges. These traits did more than ensure survival, they created an opening. In the tight margins between growth stages and shifting habitats, this native hunter found opportunity, exploiting weaknesses at just the right moment, slowly rewriting who holds power across these contested wetlands. The cottonmouth's deadly arsenal and hunting strategy set the stage for a deeper discussion about how evolution and adaptation are unfolding now, reshaping Florida's ecosystems in unexpected ways. Evolution in action. Nature often surprises us with its ability to adapt, and the story unfolding in Florida's Everglades is a vivid example of that. Cottonmouths haven't just stumbled upon pythons as food, they appear to be actively adjusting their hunting strategies to exploit this invasive species. Some researchers now wonder if these venomous snakes have learned to recognize juvenile pythons as especially easy and nutritious prey. This possibility hints at evolution happening right before our eyes. 3 separate cases documented within a single study area over just a few months suggest a pattern rather than coincidence. The repetition implies intentional targeting rather than random encounters. If cottonmouths are indeed selectively preying on juvenile pythons, it raises questions about how quickly native predators can shift behaviors in response to new threats and opportunities. This kind of rapid adaptation could reshape predator-prey dynamics across the Everglades. Such behavioral flexibility isn't unheard of in nature, but it's extraordinary to witness with an invasive species as formidable as the Burmese python. Cottonmouths have long been snake eaters, but adding an invasive giant to their menu indicates a real-time evolutionary arms race. In this contest, the cottonmouth's venom, heat-sensing capabilities, and stealth grant them an edge, especially against younger pythons that haven't yet mastered their own defenses. The implications stretch beyond just these 2 species. If native predators can adapt swiftly, it signals a possible shift toward ecosystem recovery, where natural processes begin correcting imbalances caused by human activity. However, the rapid reproduction and growth rate of pythons mean this fight is far from over. Adaptation may provide hope, but it is not an immediate or guaranteed solution. The growing relationship between these entities shows how difficult it is to control invasive species, which need special management methods. Conservation efforts need to include native predator research, which needs to study their natural reactions according to their natural behavior patterns. The behavior of cottonmouths demonstrates that ecosystems experience continuous transformation because their elements undergo periodic modifications, which lead to unexpected changes. The situation creates new inquiries which need answers. Do cottonmouths hunt pythons as their main prey, or do they only eat them when the opportunity arises? The snakes have developed a new feeding method which they use to consume their current food supply. The research results show beneficial outcomes, but the findings need further investigation. Scientists conduct ecological observation to discover newly formed ecological relationships that require time to develop. The concept of evolution, which actively transforms the Everglades, provides people with a dual sense of ecological progress that needs immediate attention. The natural world uses this method to reclaim control, which has suffered through many years of ecological disturbance. The story of cottonmouths who face their former dominators shows how nature reclaims its strength through determination. The cottonmouth establishes a new combat position through his current role, which shows one aspect of their ongoing struggle. The Florida ecosystem has assembled a team of native species who are starting their battle against invasive species. Each repeated encounter hinted at more than instinct alone. Patterns began forming, subtle but consistent, suggesting native hunters were adjusting faster than expected, closing gaps, refining tactics, and gradually transforming scattered resistance into something far more coordinated within these wetlands. This growing resistance among native predators leads us to a broader look at the allies standing up against the python invasion. Allied native species fight back. The cottonmouth's unexpected success is part of a larger, multi-front response by Florida's native wildlife against the python invasion. Massive American alligators, the classic symbol of swamp power, are reclaiming their place as top predators by slaying several tracked pythons during recent studies. In one notable case, an alligator measuring 9 feet long was responsible for dispatching a large python, illustrating that these prehistoric hunters remain formidable antagonists. But alligators aren't working alone. Bobcats, once thought to avoid python nests, have begun shifting tactics. In 2021, wildlife cameras caught a bobcat confronting a python nest, effectively raiding and stealing eggs, a first-ever documented event. This bold behavior suggests felines are learning to push back against the snake's reproductive advantage and protect their territories from the invasive threat. Additionally, predators of various sizes contribute to this natural resistance. Birds of prey, like owls and hawks, have been observed snatching young pythons from exposed positions. Their sharp eyesight and flight create a continuous threat to juvenile snakes attempting to establish themselves in vulnerable areas. Even larger mammals like black bears and Florida panthers enter the fray, preying upon pythons when opportunities arise. This growing army of native species sends a unified message. The python invasion will not go unchecked. Each predator contributes a layer of pressure, disrupting python populations incrementally. Researchers have also found indirect evidence of this battle, such as partially consumed pythons near bobcat tracks and remnants of chewed tracking devices. These signs give a glimpse into the daily struggle unfolding in the swamps, where multiple species fight for balance. Yet, despite these signs of hope, the overall war remains intense and far from won. Pythons reproduce quickly and remain masters of concealment, often eluding detection even by experienced trackers. Their ability to vanish into dense vegetation makes controlling their numbers a constant challenge for both animals and humans alike. The combined efforts of native predators buying time are invaluable, but they underscore a larger truth. The Everglades ecosystem depends on multiple forms of resistance to survive the python menace. These natural warriors, while persistent, cannot completely halt the invasion by themselves. This layered defense suggests that while adaptation is occurring, it may need to be supported and amplified to secure the future of Florida's wild landscapes. The resilience seen is remarkable, but how far it can go remains to be seen. Together, these scattered confrontations revealed a quiet coalition forming across land and water. Different hunters, different methods, yet all applying pressure in overlapping ways, creating friction that slowly chipped away at the invaders' unchecked expansion throughout the Everglades. The unfolding battle among these species highlights the complex and deeply connected web of life fighting to reclaim its home. The ongoing struggle and what's next. Despite the growing resistance mounted by native species like cottonmouths, alligators, and bobcats, the battle against invasive Burmese pythons in Florida's Everglades is far from won. These snakes reproduce quickly, laying between 12 and 36 eggs per clutch, and mature over a few years. Their high reproductive rate means that even with natural predation and human removal efforts, the python population remains alarmingly robust and difficult to control. The Everglades is an immense and challenging landscape, filled with dense vegetation and inaccessible areas where pythons can comfortably hide. Researchers and hunters alike often come within feet of these snakes without detecting them. This masterful concealment adds a layer of complexity to managing the invasion, as many snakes remain unseen and untracked despite intensive efforts. Human hunters have removed more than 5,000 Burmese pythons since elimination programs began, and events like the 2024 Python Challenge eliminated nearly 200 in a single weekend. While these numbers seem impressive, wildlife ecologists emphasize that such efforts only scratch the surface. The invasive python population still far exceeds these removals, undermining hopes for rapid ecosystem recovery. The math is sobering. Female pythons can live for decades, continuously reproducing and populating new areas. Their resilience and adaptability make them masters of survival in the Everglades, and without sustained pressure, their numbers could bounce back or even grow, despite losses. What's perhaps most striking is that native predators are not waiting for human intervention to respond. Cottonmouths started hunting pythons on their own. Bobcats began raiding python nests without prompting. Alligators continue to defend and reclaim territory as they always have. Nature is adapting in real time, creating a natural line of defense that wasn't there before. The speed of these adaptations now stands as the main question that needs assessment. The python invasion has become a permanent environmental disaster that affects ecosystems through its slow recovery process. The delicate balance that exists currently needs ongoing support, because any break in management will result in biodiversity losses and native species extinction. Researchers warn that the assessment of nature's ability to recover depends on which methods people plan to use for restoration. The Everglades face potential damage because humans need to maintain their efforts for supporting native predators while controlling invasive species. The protection of swamps requires both active swamp combat and persistent dedication toward monitoring and necessary actions. Scientists aim to discover better methods for helping native species like the cottonmouth fulfill their natural function as python hunters. The process might involve three main actions, which include habitat protection, human interference reduction, and research advancement on predator-prey relationships. The Everglades' future requires people and wildlife to work together through their partnership. The fight against the Burmese python invasion has developed into a battle that will continue over time because its final outcomes remain unknown. The Everglades system does not function as a passive entity because it assembles a strong defense against external forces. Nature needs to adapt, while people must assist its survival in order to determine whether this resistance can establish equilibrium. What happens next will depend on persistence, from both wildlife and those working to support it. Every small gain, each disrupted nest or hunted juvenile, may tip the balance incrementally, determining whether this fragile pushback can evolve into lasting control. Florida's battle against invasive pythons is a story of mystery, resilience, and unexpected allies like the cottonmouth. Nature is fighting back in surprising ways, but this ongoing struggle requires our attention and support. If you found this fascinating, please like and subscribe to stay updated on wildlife stories and the hidden forces shaping our world.